Being a guitarist myself, I know how exciting it is to get a new piece of gear. In anticipation of it, I always research it. I consider what it offers, of course, in terms of how it can augment my existing arsenal of tones. And if I'm convinced by it, then I make the decision to acquire it. The bulk of your tonal colorings come from not from outboard gear or stomp box foot pedals, but from software plugins. Perhaps you can show us some of the most recent additions to your tonal spectrum and explain and demonstrate what they do for us.
Sure. Well, let's see. I use quite a range of different plugins for different purposes. So, for example, if I move my finger on this, I get a sort of breathy effect. And that's something that I think I originally was inspired by Miles Davis playing a really breathy line on the trumpet, and I thought that's just such a nice sound. How could I recreate that on the guitar? So it took a long time. It took me a while to figure out how to get a sound that obviously doesn't sound like Miles, but it has a breathiness to it. And that what that is something I add to the guitar. So here I've got a filter. It's filtering out everything below about 3K or a bit below that, and then I've got a Neve emulation of a Neve EQ by Waves. And what was interesting about this EQ, I've got various emulations of Neve EQs. This particular one, they all sound different. I could actually not find a way to use it in mixing that for me worked. But I found that if I really put it at extreme settings, it was very dirty and noisy. And that the dirtiness of it and the way it added harmonics at extreme boost settings created a kind of a... It didn't create the breathiness because that was already really in the signal a little bit. I could hear it just a little tiny bit. And it just brought that out nicely. So that's what that one's doing. And then to emphasize that even more, I did a lot of boosting here. The result was too much top end above 3K, and so I pulled that away. And what you're left with is a very kind of breathy thing. And then that was sometimes peaking too high, and so I put a limiter on it to contain it, when sometimes it would suddenly peak very loudly, because when you're boosting something that much, you do get some kind of unexpected effects sometimes in the volume. So that controls it, and I just fade it in. Using this touch strip. So that's one thing I'm doing. Another thing I do is to say add to my tone. So I might have a tone. So that's a wave shaper that I'm using a pedal to fade in, and what we've got there is I've got a limiter, a Waves L2 limiter, and that is basically taking my original guitar signal and squashing it to the point where I've got a very even signal, because the wave shaper works better when it's got this particular setting on this wave shaper. Works better when I get a very even signal. Then it goes into the wave shaper, and what this is, it's called Turbo, and it's by an innovative company called Sine Vibes, who they're a really great company, and they've been really great to me. There's been times when I needed a change, an extra controller, a change to the plugin, and sometimes at kind of short notice, and they've come through on that amazingly for me and sent me a special version with what I needed on it. So they've been great. And what I like about this plugin is the sound of the Wave Shaper is just so nice. It's velvety, beautiful, beautiful sound, and you can control the exact shape that you give the audio signal really in a very detailed way. So this is my favorite Wave Shaper for lots of reasons, actually. You can do a lot of different good, nice things with it. And then after that, I'm taking away a bit of top end, filtering out a bit of top end. Then it's going through this, which is an emulation of an SSLG series desk, which just gives it a very subtle, smooth, bigger sound, basically, is what it does by adding some harmonics and tonal changes. Then I've got an emulation of a CLA 76 compressor, which isn't compressing it. As you can see, the needle isn't moving. But it's, again, tonally, it's adding a tone to it, which I liked. It just adds a really beautiful tone to it. And then this is an API 550B emulation, again by Waves, and again I'm boosting quite a bit on this one, and that's changing the tone, but again it's adding quite a lot of harmonics, extra harmonics, and the combined effect of all these things is to give this almost voice-like sound. So again, this is the result of a lot of experimentation and messing about hours of experimenting, but that's part of what I do, and I love doing that. So for me, it's all part of what I do, and being able to actually have this these are things I developed sometimes in studio mixing sessions, and then now that to actually be able to have it on live on the laptop is just amazing. I've got reverbs. So I've got a Lexicon reverb here. And this is a great sounding reverb, and it does some fantastic things that I use it for sustaining chords and other things. I've got some other reverbs. I've got a Waves. This is another great reverb. The H reverb, another great sounding reverb. Those two are two of the best reverbs in the world, I think. Of course, you've got the Bricasti M7, which is the most realistic, beautiful sounding reverb that I've ever heard, but it's a hardware unit, and these two are have their own amazing and beautiful sound, the Lexicon and the Waves 8 reverb, which is a newcomer, but it's absolutely a beautiful sounding reverb. They all have their own flavor and color, and each one I think brings something special to the sonic palette. The other one is the Arcam Verb 3, which is also a very beautiful reverb, which I also use. And what else have I got? I've got a looper. I've got Omnisphere, which is my favorite synth. Use that for various things. So, for example, I might use it to add something into the back of my guitar. I think there's a track on Proof of Light where I use that sound.
Wow, incredible.
That's what I like about synths, is you can get these amazing sounds that are kind of like, the sounds I go for are often kind of sounds that guitars hint at but don't quite do, unless you're Jimi Hendrix. Or something like this, maybe some beautiful synth sounds that you can use, that I sometimes use for chords. So we've got the synth, and sometimes I will play samples. So samples that I will collect I collect myself from various places and record, and then I'll trigger those from the guitar.